The Sixers' true missing piece of their championship puzzle may have just hit the open market. I'm here to break down who exactly that is, how he became available, and the potential route to bringing him to the Philadelphia 76ers. Before I get into it, I want to make sure you guys are smashing that subscribe button. We want to get over the 3,000 mark before the end of January. We got big plans. The Sixers are cruising right now. We want to make sure that we are at our best in growing the Sixers Digest channel. So make sure you please support. It helps us out a ton, and I appreciate it very much. Now, the guy that I want to get into and talk about today is Bruce Brown. So I'm going to begin by talking about how Bruce Brown became available, and begin by talking about the Pacers and Raptors trade here. The Toronto Raptors traded Pascal Siakam to the Pacers, with Bruce Brown being a significant piece of that deal, more for the financial side of things, but Bruce Brown and a number of draft picks sent over to the Toronto Raptors. Now, there's a lot of speculation about why Bruce Brown will not be remaining in Toronto, and the biggest reason for that is Bruce Brown is the type of role player that is tailor-made to play in the biggest moments. That he's a guy that, when it is deep in the playoffs, on the biggest moments, that is a guy that you want on your team. I like what the Toronto Raptors are doing. I think this is the right direction for the organization, but they're not a team that is going to be ready competing for a title this year. They're still in the early part of their developmental front, and they can further maximize their window and their options by further flipping him for a draft pick. To give an idea for what kind of the potential price point would be for Bruce Brown here, I did want to pull up this report here, and this from Evan Sidery here, saying that the Raptors could net an additional first-round pick in return for Bruce Brown if they decide to reroute him before the trade deadline, per Shams Charania. Brown's value appears to be a first and the necessary salary filler to match his $22 million salary contract. So I'll start by saying that I think that is a more than fair price point for Bruce Brown. That one first-round pick for a player of his caliber is quite worth doing for the Sixers, and he is the level of player I do think could take them over the edge. To dive into what he brings to the floor specifically, I'll begin by pulling up his stats here, and he is a guy that I will start with by saying that does more than the stat sheet indicate. That so far this season with Indiana, he has averaged 12.1 points, 4.7 rebounds, 3.0 assists, 1.1 steals. He's also a solid shooter from the perimeter, shooting just 32.7% from three this year on 3.1 attempts. That is slightly below his career average, which is 33.9%, but he's also coming off a season with Brooklyn not too long ago, where he shot 40% over the length of the regular season. And as I mentioned, he's a guy that does stuff beyond what the stat sheet show. For starters, he's a playoff riser, that he's had some of his biggest moments on the biggest stage. Remember him dropping 40 with Brooklyn. He was calling an ISO, calling off Kevin Durant, calling off Kyrie Irving, saying, this is my time to shine. I want this shot. And you know what? He delivered. He won them a playoff game straight up on his back. But it is not this scoring ability, which is why I have this strong desire to bring him to the Sixers. It's the little things that he does do. And there's a particular play that I think could be especially excellent on this Sixers team. Bruce Brown is excellent as a screener and roller, and beyond that, he has the playmaking instincts to capitalize off this. So I've seen them do this for a number of teams, most specifically with the Denver Nuggets. I thought he was especially excellent when doing this with them last year, where he would come up, set a screen at the top of the key, roll off it, get the ball, and typically in these situations, when it is a big man, the options are you drive to the basket or you pull up and take a pick and pop jumper. For Bruce Brown, he possesses the ability to get downhill and kick to the corners to create shots for others. That level of playmaking ability and instinct is something that is very rare across basketball players, and something that he does at an extremely high level. So when you talk about the Sixers team and what the weaknesses are, I still think that there is a need for some additional playmaking. Now, it is great the lengths that both Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey have grown as playmakers this year, that we've seen each of them take significant strides in their game to get better at bringing the most out of their teammates. But to supplement this with a guy like Bruce Brown, who is capable of being a primary playmaker in certain lineups, in certain rosters around him and guys that he can, that is a valuable asset and some just positional versatility that can be added to this overall roster. Now, I did want to look a little bit deeper at his contract. It was interesting that he signed with Indiana this year, that, he was a crucial part of that Denver Nuggets run last year, a guy that they were very sad to see let go, and it was unfortunate to see him get booed in his return for that ring ceremony, because I do think he meant a ton to that franchise, but obviously business is business, and he did have to accept this deal. That the Pacers had the exact same outlook that the Sixers should, as bringing in Bruce Brown is the type of player that elevates your team in a playoff atmosphere. Those are the lengths that the Pacers are looking to extend to and grow to take those steps as a franchise. Now, you cannot argue that Pascal Siakam is the better player. There is no debates there, and that is what the Pacers' mindset ultimately was. And I've mentioned this plenty of times, that oftentimes in the NBA, the financial standards and these dollar signs numbers attached to players matter more than the actual talent when you're trying to make these contracts work due to the CBA, the contract implications, the salary cap, all these reasons. So that's kind of why Bruce Brown found himself sent. Now, to do his contract specifically, an awesome tweet here. It says, Bruce Brown Jr.'s contract could be quite attractive to teams, i.e. Philadelphia and OKC, because of the flexibility it can provide. Number one, you can pick up his $23 million team option, this being for next year. Number two, you can decline it, renounce his rights, and use cap space, which the Sixers have plenty of. Or number two, you can decline the team option if you strike out in free agency, re-sign him using his non-bird rights. So a ton of flexibility that brings on when looking ahead to the season. And just to dive in fully on what those contract numbers are, as you can see, $22 million he's on the books for this year for his age 27 season. That is a lot for a player of his caliber, a guy that I would consider a high-level role player, but you have to think about what he actually brings to the floor. And that flexibility, it's rare to see a player of his caliber on a team option. That more often than not, this is a player option. They hold control. So it is nice to have that flexibility where the Sixers can truly gauge how much of an impact he could bring throughout the length of the season and then ultimately decide from there. Now, when I speak about the on-court stuff for Bruce Brown, there's another side of the floor that I have not acknowledged yet. Bruce Brown is a very good defender, and while the Sixers have been fine defensively, and they're always going to be a pretty solid defensive team when you have an anchor the level of Joel Embiid backing everything up, I still have some concerns about their perimeter defense. I'm not saying Bruce Brown is the ultimate stopper, but he's a great option to be able to throw at opposing just really talented players. The Jason Tatums, the Jaylen Browns, those type of players that the Sixers are going to need to get by throughout the playoffs. While I love how good Nico Batum's looked, and he's played incredible defensively so far this season, there's still concern in the back of my mind that he runs out of gas come postseason time, that maybe this isn't here to stay in the way that the Sixers need to be. And then when you look at a player like DeAnthony Melton, who's in the top 5 in the NBA in steals, who's a very great defender across the NBA just by every standard of it, there's still some size concerns that I have with Melton. Bruce Brown's slightly bigger than him. He's still a guy that's going to be undersized in a lot of matchups, but there is a level of respect that I think he has around the league as a defender that frankly just matters. That a lot of times when you look at some of these NBA matchups, that defense a lot of times comes with reputation. I don't think DeAnthony Melton carries quite that same level of respect in league circles as a guy like Bruce Brown, a proven champion, a guy with a ring on his finger, and a guy that has done it alongside a lot of these big names, the Kevin Durant's, the Nikola Jokic, Kyrie Irving. You can mention a lot of them, and that does matter in the context of things. Now, I don't want to talk too deep in the trades here. I did want to point out this mock trade I saw floating around. Shout out to Jacob Moreno. He runs Sixers Country on Instagram, as well as is active on Twitter as well. And he tweeted out this, the Bruce Brown / Sixers mock trade 2.0. In this case, the Sixers would be receiving Bruce Brown. Toronto would be receiving Robert Covington, Furkan Korkmaz, Daniel House, KJ Martin, and this 2 second-round picks in the specific deal. Now, I'll begin by saying I don't think this is the exact deal that would come down. I saw another one that he threw out with Marcus Morris involved. All that in that kind of $17 million tier, which is what Marcus Morris would put you in the ballpark of this deal. Frankly, I would be more interested in throwing Marcus Morris in this than Robert Covington. That I personally believe Robert Covington is going to play a crucial part and a guy that I want in this playoff rotation. The way how effective he is defensively, the need that the Sixers team has on the boards is something that Covington can help out through. And we haven't got a true look at him. He's been hurt for over a month now with a knee injury that's been battling him. Very frustrating, a ton of swelling there. So I don't want people to write off Robert Covington yet. But the bottom line is when you have to get a guy, you have to give. So you have to find a way to match that. For me, I'm looking more in the package of kind of a Marcus Morris and a Furkan Korkmaz deal. I do think Furkan Korkmaz is viewed more positively around league circles than he is in Philadelphia, and you attach one draft pick to that. That is obviously the true goal of what the Raptors want in this deal. So that is something that I think is possible. And once again, just to bring up the specific kind of price point for what is expected for Bruce Brown, says Brown's value appears to be a first and the necessary salary filler to match his $22 million salary. So by doing that, by pulling the trigger on that, the Sixers accomplish a lot of things. That I know I've talked plenty about this cap space plan, the Sixers' desire to keep all options open come this offseason to make sure that they have the potential to throw whatever money they have at whatever players they think are best suited to elevate this franchise. But I still believe they must do everything possible to give this team a chance to win a championship this year. You do not know how many years you're going to have with Joel Embiid at his prime, with Tyrese Maxey clearly taking these superstar leaps, playing like an all-star all season. So Bruce Brown is the type of player where you can accomplish both in this, that he's a proven champion. He's a guy that we know is capable of playing high-level, high-leverage situations as a role player that fits just about every player. One of the most universally respected, loved, and just compatible games when we talk about a role player in that capacity. So you get that, you check that box, and you don't shoot yourself in the foot by committing to these long-term contracts that would be brought on by a Zach LaVine or a DeJounte Murray. Now, I still am open to taking that big swing. I am not closing the door on that. But if Daryl Morey is dead set on keeping these options open, you can continue for that to be the case while helping this team right now. For me, Bruce Brown has climbed to just about the top of my list for who these Sixers should be working the phones trying to figure out a deal. We know it is not the easiest thing in the world to negotiate with Masai Ujiri up there, and we will see how tight he closes him to the vest. I would say Brown is probably the most likely player to get flipped out of Toronto at this point in time. But he's been very open about that. The work is not done from that roster, and they have plenty of moves yet to make. So I do want to hear what you think about Bruce Brown in the comments. Let me know if you think he's the missing piece as much as I do. This is the player I've probably been the most excited for through all of these trade rumors. I'm going to have a couple more names dropping throughout the weekend that I can't wait to get into and discuss. But make sure, once again, you are smashing that subscribe button, liking this video, and let me know your full thoughts on Bruce Brown as a whole. I'll be back right here on Sixers Digest next time. Peace.